Hi there.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. It's eight
Good.
o'clock. So I'm sitting there going, I should have had another coffee. What time? Where are you, Tim?
I'm in Japan.
What time is it
Nihon
there?
des. It is 9:01 a.m.
Aha.
Friday morning.
Wow. So you are 11 hours.
Ahead, probably.
Yeah, ahead. Yes. I'm looking
Yeah.
at my clock going, yeah,
Oh, so
you're,
you're in Eastern, no, not Eastern time. Yeah, Eastern time zone.
yeah, I'm Eastern.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense. Okay,
So
we're
maybe I
here.
should
Let's
put,
do this.
let me ask, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let
No
me
problem.
ask you which background is best for what you're doing. Does this work since we're talking about leadership?
Uh, any background you like. Like, I mean, this has nothing to do with neuroscience, but it looks pretty, and this is a physical background. So it's not like I'm changing it anytime soon.
Well, do you prefer that I use the other one?
I prefer to use the one that you think best represents you.
Oh, this one? Yeah. Okay. I'll stick with what I
Okay,
have. I just muscle
great, great.
tested it. I got a yes. Stick with what I have. Okay.
Okay, okay. So can you spell your name for me so I make sure I've got it absolutely right? Okay, Terry. Okay, we got that part. Wildman. Okay, that's not so hard.
Wildemann. Yeah. Wildemann.
Wildemann. Okay, thank you.
That's
Um,
okay.
yes, please forgive me if I make such silly mistakes. It's kind of a
That's
human thing.
not that's okay. It's I'm trying to get us set up so that I am seeing you um over and up and over without okay. I think we're good.
Great, great. Well, so let's start with this. First and number one, the thing we got to do is permission. Is it okay with you if I take this material, this conversation we have, and post it in whole and in part on social media? I want to make sure it's okay with you before I do that.
Absolutely. I would never do something like this if I wasn't open to that.
Please introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Okay. I'm Terry Wildemann. I am the founder of Intuitive Leadership and SHIFTology, where we work with leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, and help them fine tune their leadership skills as well as their communication skills, their wealth, and their health.
What questions do you think we should be asking ourselves about transforming organizational culture and leadership?
That kind of culture, our workplace culture truly is about looking at ourselves in the mirror every day. Those of us who are leaders, we have a responsibility to our people, to ourselves, to those above us, to those below us, to those who work side by side with us at the same level, to ask open ended questions and ensure that they are happy. One of the things I'm finding right now is a lot of the workplace cultures, folks aren't happy. They're being worked very, very hard. Upper leadership is not asking the people who are actually doing the work what they need, what tools they need, what will help them, and they're not listening to them. These are the folks who are actually in the trenches doing the work. And if the executives and the leaders would just think about what is it that they need, they might be surprised at how the workplace culture can turn from a very negative space to a positive space because you are valuing people and you are making them feel like they're important to the workplace. They're not just a number.
Not just carbon-based profit units?
No, not at all.
What are the most significant challenges you face in transforming organizational culture and leadership?
It's the fear of change. That's the bottom line. It's the fear of change. It's about guiding these folks who are visionaries to see what could be, but they're so stuck in what is. When you're stuck in the what is, sometimes it's really hard to see what is up here. My work is about guiding leaders to look at what is happening in front of them from the 30,000 foot view as well as sea level. So when you are looking from the 30,000 foot view and you're looking down, you get to see the entire landscape. And then when we bring it down to sea level, you're in the space where you see things at that from that perspective, and then you merge it all together. And to get with a very powerful team, you can then talk about what is working and what isn't working. You can't see the holes if you're in it at sea level all the time, but you can see the holes from the 30,000 foot view.
Could you describe a recent situation where you felt that a leader could have benefited from additional training in culture building, leadership, or both?
Absolutely. There is one organization where a very senior person brought in another senior person, and this person, the second in command, didn't listen, immediately jumped in and started making changes. One of the, they know nothing about the culture. They don't know what is going on. They know nothing about the people. And instead of sitting back and talking with the existing leadership and asking, again, open-ended questions and getting really clear on what the challenges are, what the pain points are, what is working and what isn't working, they just went in and started making changes. And I know. And unfortunately, this very prestigious organization is falling apart because of it. And it's a situation where releasing this person from employment is very challenging. So they're sort of stuck with this person. And I was told that they're going to be bringing an executive coach in to help them. And I am an executive coach, but I'm not the right person for that specific situation. And it was one of those, I'm not even sure the executive coach is going to be able to fix this.
Right.
It was, and it's sad because it has literally had a huge ripple effect throughout the entire organization, and it's not a positive one at all.
I actually call it vulture culture, and that has less to do with the Industrial Revolution and more to do with the fact that it's more like this evolutionary default without deciding in a more constructive way what the culture is to be. It becomes politicking and backbiting. It's literally the vultures on the carcass of one, but you got to watch behind you because that vulture might be taking your back next. And that's the default if we don't
Yes.
do something more intentional to make it different and better for everybody.
And this is where intuition comes in.
Mm-hmm.
To me, intuition is huge in the workplace. And that's why, intuitive leadership is one of my brands. And, a lot of people think that intuition is very mystical. It's not. We're born with it. We all have intuition, every single one of us. And when leaders listen to their intuition and allow their people to listen to their intuition and understand how to merge the practical, tactical, and logical with the emotional, the energetic, the spiritual, and the intuitive, you start to create a rock solid foundation where people can truly trust their gut and lead with confidence, competence, and credibility. And I find that those organizations that are so stuck in the practical, tactical, and logical, their people aren't really happy. There's no heart in the organization. But the moment you step into the emotional and the intuitive, you start to get the pulse. You start to, hey, it's the pulse, the heart. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You get the pulse of the organization, and you start to see what people really want and need. And that is huge. And to be able to trust your intuition and not fear being laughed at because you are really, really good at listening to your intuition and guiding your teams to success. The best companies in the world Some of the most famous people that we know use their intuition every step of the way. As an inventor, Tim, you mentioned that you're an inventor. As an inventor, how often do you use your gut that leads you to things? It may not make sense, but you know what? I'm going to do this. That's
Well,
intuition.
yeah, I'm always open to trying it. It's an area which I have mixed feelings about. I absolutely intuition is really important. Now, me being a neuroscience and science geek, it's not at all about spirituality or metaphysics, but people lose the fact that even the most scientific people, even the best decision makers, like one of my favorite people to talk about is Daniel Kahneman. It's like
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't, I mean, he's deceased now, but the best leaders don't ignore it, but they recognize that it's not the only tool, that it's actually, I think the ones who actually balance the other components with the intuition, because the research on intuition basically says this: you're no smarter in your intuition if it isn't something you're already very experienced at and have a lot of feedback from. So, for example, when I'm in an English class and I'm teaching C-suite executives, or I'm in any space teaching C-suite executives or 2-year-olds, using my real life experience and the feedback I've gained. So if we have extensive experience at something, our intuition tends to be reliable. But when we go, well, I'm just going to get this gut feeling about this thing that I never do, and I'm just going to trust it blindly, in cases like that, the research shows that, well, if your brain hasn't had a lot of exposure to it, then your likelihood of being reliable at something you have little experience or feedback on is very low. It's no better than chance. So I think that's an important component is, of course, you'd be foolish. Humans are a critical part. All business is personal because it's filled with persons. And the logical, tactical stuff has to be in there too. So to ignore
Absolutely.
any part is at your peril.
It is. Exactly. It is at your peril. Because especially if you're sitting there, you're a leader, and you can't stop thinking about something. It's this nudge, this continuous nudge. Something isn't right. Something isn't right. It just doesn't feel right. That is intuition. That's not intuition is not mystical. I have to say that. It is not mystical. It is ingrained. It is, we know it, you know, but the way we're raised, a lot of people think intuition is like super woo woo and all this other stuff. I'm like, well, some of it can be. However, for those of us who are in leadership, when we learn how to really work with it, for example, you could be sitting behind the office, your office desk, and all of a sudden you get this feeling, I need to go to the marketing department. I don't know why, but I'm getting this feeling I need to go to the marketing department. And you walk down there and you start talking with the marketing people, and they're about to make a huge mistake. And you happen, because you listen to your gut, your intuition, that nudge, you went in there and you were able to talk with them and you found out about the mistake before it cost the company $1 billion.
Right.
That's intuition.
Well, and what I like about that is that's true, but here's the other thing that I think is important because it's a matter of humility. Like, Daniel Kahneman was a Nobel Prize winner, but he also had humility that just like our logical and tactical and experiential decisions, if we're
Mm-hmm.
not also willing to say, I have this intuition, but I'm not going to take it wholesale as the answer because it's like,
Right.
I don't know what it is. It may be right, but it may also be wrong. And that's without that, when people go blind faith into their intuition, that's when it
Mm-hmm.
becomes basically woo-woo and unscientific. Is like,
You are correct. What that does is, by following that gut and that nudge, it gives you the opportunity to ask open-ended questions.
yeah,
And if anything, that's the most important thing. When you keep asking the questions because something doesn't feel right, and you keep asking and asking until it actually feels right in your body, the example that I use is the iceberg. Okay. From here up, it's the top of the iceberg. It's what we see. All right. It's the brain. This is what we see. But from the neck down, it's the bottom of the iceberg. It's what you don't see. And that's what sunk the Titanic. is what you didn't see. So with the iceberg, what I call the iceberg theory, when we trust how our body feels when it comes to intuition, we're in a powerful place because it will give us information. And when we know that something doesn't feel right, and we can ask questions of other people, of ourselves, of projects, all of that, that just leads us to where it is we need to go to get a very powerful result.
I like that. One thing about your specific word that jumped out at me in a very positive way was you said opportunity rather than answer. As soon as somebody
Yeah.
says answer, it's like, okay, now we're doing the metaphysical stuff like your gut is always right. No, it isn't. It's
No, it's
more
not.
likely to be right when it's extensively experienced with feedback, and just as likely to be crazy wrong when it's like, well, I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to use my gut. Like, for example, for this interview, for the feedback I've got, it was like, well, I have to take some intuitive or gut sense about whether certain questions are appropriate, whether some of the stuff I says, well, can we manage the time by doing X? It's the first time I've done it. I think it should work, but I don't know. And if I'm certain, then you get into that danger zone of sort of blind overconfidence and ignoring the results.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It really is a melding of all of it. The left, the right, the practical, tactical, logical, emotional, energetic, intuitive. It really is a melding of the two, and trusting that melding. And bottom line, it's about trusting yourself and knowing yourself. As a leader, when you trust yourself and you know yourself, and you know how your body feels when something isn't right, or you know how your body feels when something is right, and or is more positive, and it allows you to move forward to the next level, the next level, the next step, the next step. I use it. I like to share with people. It's like using stepping stones in a creek.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're in a creek, you're walking on the stones. You could go, all of a sudden you get to some that are over here, some that are over there. Which way do you go? And you get really quiet because you don't know which is the best way to get to the other side. And one side sort of feels a little stronger. That's your intuition talking to take you to go that way. But if you don't listen to it and you go the other side, things can get really hard. So,
Well, that gets really interesting too, because this overlaps on sort of the neuroscience side with, of course, there are things we are not either subconscious, which means if we paid attention, we could notice them, or unconscious, which means we have absolutely no access. I like to distinguish those because most people just use
yeah.
them intermittently as the same thing, and they're totally not. But an interesting thing that came out of, I don't know which of the many books I listened to talked about it, but it talked about even if there was no better decision, people who
Mm-hmm.
have damage in a certain part of their brain, which sort of deprives them of access to an emotional component to decision making. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you've probably heard of the philosophy problem about, there's a a donkey or a horse, and they're equidistant between two things of hay. Logically, they're going to starve to death. If we go pure logic, excuse me, and that also is true of humans, if we go pure logic all the time, there will be times where either we don't have the information or they are truly completely equal. Then and only then, people who have this deficit, this part of their brain is damaged or whatever, the simplest decisions in life are overwhelming and
That's right.
impossible to make because they can't go, well, okay, I'll go with this one. And at some point, surrender or give a certain amount of emotional response, even if it's not rational, because purely rational means you starve to death or you wait forever to make a decision that there's no way for you to know the outcome anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an important part of our decision-making mechanism. So the next one is, what specific outcomes would you hope to achieve through training in leadership and culture building?
To learn how to shift in the moment. Oftentimes, things happen and we don't know where to go or what to do. And to be able to train leaders to pause. Pausing is an incredibly powerful tool. And take a deep breath. And I call it quick shift into their heart. The heart organ has been shown to have amazing energy and sends more messages to the brain than the brain does to the heart. And the heart can be measured 6 to 10 feet away from the body in a 360-degree circumference. This is all research done by the Heart Math Institute out of California. And when something happens and they just take a deep breath, shift into their heart, and just go quiet for just a few seconds and allow themselves to settle, the answers can come very quickly to what it is that they need. Most of the time, we tend to react. And when we are constantly reacting, we tend to do, oftentimes we do things that could be done a lot better if we just took a moment and paused. So in leadership in the workplace, it's about honoring that. Take a pause, take a breath. It's okay to make your decisions in order to be able to effectively lead. That is huge and probably one of the toughest things that the people that I work with need to learn, because their minds are going a bazillion miles a minute. Go, 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 go. Have to, need to. So they're incredibly stressed. They're on the verge of burnout. How many people in corporate America are on the verge of burnout right now? And a lot of it is just take 60 seconds an hour. 60 seconds an hour. That's it. Put on a blasted timer and take a pause, breathe deeply, relax your head and your shoulders. And it's a real riot when I take them through this before they need to make a decision, because I tell them, let the chair hold you up. It's what it's built for. And they keep sitting bolt upright because they don't know how to relax their bodies and allow the chair to do their job. And what I've learned is when these are leaders who don't allow the chair to do its job, to support them because they can't relax, there's a little bug in the back of my mind that says, are they doing that to their people too? Okay. They're not allowing them to do their job.
It's indicative, I think. Yes. So
Yes, it is.
the next one is, in your opinion, what are the key skills and competencies that leaders need to create a thriving organizational culture?
Number one, listen. Number one, listen. When you listen to what is going on around you in general, you become mindful, aware of what is happening. Then understanding the behavior styles of folks. You've got people who are very direct by nature. You have others who are very talkative by nature. You have the extroverts and you have the introverts. And when you understand the human behavior, I teach DISC. It's just a very easy tool that I love to work with. And when you understand what each of them do and the fact that you need them all on your team, that assists the leaders to make the changes in the workplace that are necessary. The D's, their emotion is anger, their focus is that's their stress response, and their focus is go, just do it. I don't care how you do it, just do it. So they have no clue how other people are doing it. Okay, fine and dandy. Then you've got the rah-rahs. And the rah-rahs, they're the ultimate optimists, the influential behavior styles. They love yap, 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 but they know people very well. So if you put them in the right space in the workplace, they can really do very well for the organization. And their emotion is not being liked. That's their fear. The steadies, they despise change, but they're the ultimate customer service professional. You put that person in a customer service role, oh my gosh, your organization is going to thrive because they treat your customer with class, with dignity. They take care of them. And then you've got the conscientious, which is the detail person. And that detail person, the engineers, the architects, the CPAs, the accountants, boom, 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 boom. They can see all the nuts and bolts. They can see the holes very quickly, but they tend to be the pessimists and the skeptics. That's their emotion. But when you bring a team together with all four and you really listen to all of them, you become the maestro. You become the coordinator of powerful teams throughout your organization. And when you know what job they like best, one really good idea is to ask them instead of just stick them in a job too. That would be very helpful, which a lot of leaders don't do. You know, it's from a very practical and tactical perspective, it's you've got the marketing, you've got the sales, you've got operations, you've got HR. Well, it depends. A lot of companies don't have HR anymore. They bring it in from the outside. You've got all of these folks that require you to lead and manage. And leadership is the emotional side. Management is the practical and tactical side. Two different things. It's about knowing what to do when.
Yeah. The one thing that I was thinking of while you were speaking about that was you were talking essentially, in a sense, about diversity. I'm not talking about a political correct form of that, just people are different, people have strengths and weaknesses. And there's a book that I think is awesome called The Wisdom of Crowds by James Surowiecki, I think it is. And he talked about it, and it's been like mathematically proven that as long as a crowd is diverse, their collective intelligence is much higher, only under certain conditions. Essentially, the conditions are that they sort of have they're not being so much influenced by each other. It's sort of like when a decision is being made, that they all contribute equally and at the same time, rather than, politicking for a certain position, because then what you get is you get things like housing bubbles, right? Where one person or one group dominates and everybody starts following them versus, okay, everybody write down your ideas now before we even start talking, like the private brainstorm before the meeting, because the loudmouth like me, the confident guy like me, who thinks or feels sometimes he knows everything and he has an answer and might, but the problem is, what about the quiet, the introvert who may have an idea?
Exactly.
It's like, you know what? I might love to talk, but I like your idea better. It will not be
Mm-hmm.
brought up unless somebody writes it down first. So in what you said, I heard on my brain was thinking about the strength and the strength of collective intelligence based on
Mm-hmm.
diversity. And yeah, totally. And there's lots of good science to support that for sure. Next one is, what is the ideal duration for a comprehensive course on transforming organizational culture, leadership, or both?
Well, it takes a minimum of 3 years to really transform a culture from where it is to where it was to where you want it to be. Um, Change itself, for example, somebody who goes from one country to another, change can take 6 months. So it depends on the size of the organization. It depends on the background of the organization. It depends on many, many things. I don't think you can give that an exact time frame. That's something that has always bothered me. Oh, yes, well, we can do that in a year. Oh, yes, we can do that in 6 months. You are working with individuals, you are working with people. And great trainers understand that everyone is different. And sometimes it can be like trying to herd cats. Trying to get people to training even is like herding cats, trying to get them to it. No. So a lot of it is understanding what training the organization needs in order to create the change. And it's also about, instead of just throwing training at people, which a lot of organizations do, I want this kind of training, or I want that kind of training. Is that what you really need to create the change that you want? A lot of companies don't ask those questions. These higher ups think, oh, well, I want this training and I want that training and I want someone sort of go to that training, without looking at the big picture of what are the results that you expect to get that person to get from that training, and how is it going to benefit them and the organization as a whole.
Those are the actual results. And if you're not asking the questions and taking some kind of measurements, then you're
Mm-hmm.
just speculating anyway. So absolutely, you got to look at the needs and then you got to look at the results.
Right now I'm doing a training. I will be doing a training for a organization, which is a nonprofit. And they called me asking me to do a 2-hour communications training. And I went, really? for, for how many people? And I was giggling a little bit. I was like, all right, fine and dandy. I know these people. And with nonprofits, income can be a challenge. Paying
Mm-hmm.
for things can be a challenge. I was able to get them to allow me to do communications training, 2 sessions, 2 hours each for the leaders and 2 hours each for the staff. I can't get them to shift into or go into continuous coaching of the
Mm-hmm.
leadership. And what a lot of us face is, number one, financial challenges that corporations have with bringing in training. And that's the first thing that gets cut, by the way. In 2001, I opened my leadership center, and it was September of 1st of 2001, and 9/11 happened 10 days later. Guess what was cut? The very first
Ouch.
thing that was cut. Oh yeah, it was ouch. And I had a 5-year lease. So trust me, it was painful. Um, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is you can do all the training on the planet for your people, but if you don't have the backup and the coaching to keep what it is that you teach your folks, all that money, effort, and training goes by the wayside, because you end up losing, unlearning or losing, forgetting most of what you learn within 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So coaching is critical in the workplace in order to really create a cohesive program that creates change to get you to the level and the results that you want.
What factors would influence your decision about the ideal duration? So you've given a ballpark, you've said it depends, but what
Mm-hmm.
would tweak that? What would be the primary causes of tweaking that number up or down?
It depends on who the training is for, number one, what kind of training it is, and the challenges that the people already have with that training. One of the things that I do is I go in and I clear out emotional baggage from folks that are really having a hard time crossing the success finish line. And
Mm-hmm.
when leaders do that, they keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a difference. So we get to pinpoint what that is that's holding them back. I can do that very, very quickly. That's why my clients call me the intuitive truth detective. However, if someone is resistant to working with me because I don't need training, I don't want this, I don't want that. It's about taking people where they are. So again, in order to the time frame, I'd like to say, okay, I can work with them for 3 months. I love a minimum of 3 months. Minimum of 3 months for me is my threshold. However, depending on the size of the organization, 6 months to a year would be even better. But it depends on how the program is created, because everything, I don't do canned stuff. I don't do, some of my programs are evergreen, but I don't like to do canned stuff when I go into an organization, because each culture is unique. Each culture has different challenges, even in the same industry.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about using a baseline of 3 months with understanding that we don't know what is going to evolve from those 3 months. And it's almost like a Pandora's box sometimes, what comes out of it. And in interacting, I don't like to use the word dealing, but in working with that Pandora's box and what comes out of it, that is what's hidden underneath and energetically affects the organization. So it's clearing out that negativity stuff first, and then getting to a space where the positivity comes in through language, through actions, through call to actions, through the products that you're using. All of that integrated, not infiltrated, integrated into the program.
Which formats or delivery methods would be most effective for the kind of training we've talked about?
Again, I think it depends on the organization. You know, I've been in the training world now for almost 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done the same thing twice. Whether it's government organizations have certain things. Government organizations have. I've worked with federal government. I've worked with state government. I've worked with entrepreneurs. All of them have different needs. So identifying that depends on the foundation and who it is that I'm working with completely. I you can't get I don't like to give that an exact qualification because it's all customized. I customize. I have my foundational stuff, and then I customize that to the
Yes.
organization.
It's like if you're an expert, then you're an expert and you can change with change. You can
Mm-hmm.
adapt to the situation in the way you're describing. And that's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, I've never thought of it that way, or I've never seen that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Given that, here's how we're going to deal with it. And that's also me in the classroom. Sometimes I found high-ranking individuals in the organization who, in this case, it was just a corporate English class, but high-ranking individuals in the organization, but their English was lower. They were self-conscious about it because it's like a lot, they're an authority. They sometimes toured Japan to talk about marketing, so they're an expert at what they're an expert at. So they're used to being high-ranking and authoritative, and now they're in this room with people who are like some 20 somethings, very junior, just got in the door, and they're better at what he can't do. And it was interesting because it took a little bit of challenge to say, fortunately, the culture was very good, which is unusual, honestly, in Japan, where it isn't, shut up and get in line and put your job before your life in every sense of the word. They actually have a word for it here. It's like karoshi, death from overwork. I think it's karoshi. My pronunciation may be wrong, but it's an actual thing here in Japan. So that's the default. But I really liked it because the company said, well, how is everybody doing? It was like, well, this individual needs to speak more. And he needs to be required. In this case, it's like, I'm going to force him to speak more, or he's required to speak more because he sort of wants to just go pass. It's like, there's no passing. I can't teach you a skill by having you pass. So it was interesting. It was that kind of thing where it was like, this is a unique situation I haven't seen before. It, in this particular case, it was anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's unique, so you have to adapt. And if you can't adapt, then again, are you really qualified to be in the room calling yourself an expert or calling yourself a trainer or a consultant? If you can't be in that room and say, even if you have to say, you know what, I don't know yet how we're going to change this, but now that I
Mm-hmm.
know it, I'm going to, put my brain to it.
Well, those are two. There are two qualities that are coming up for me in what you're talking about, and one of them is humility, and the other one is vulnerability.
Hmm.
And those two qualities, some people look at as weak, whereas in fact they're actually a strength. They're huge. They're wonderful. They open the door to being able to connect with other humans.
Hmm.
And when we're humble and choose to be a little bit vulnerable and take off our expert hats and whatever it is that we're doing, we really do attract opportunities to make ourselves better because we're listening better.
Hmm. Well, to me, as much as I expect somebody, and I keep using the word expert because that's just the most convenient word for it, um, a real expert also has the the integrity, the vulnerability, and the humility to say, I don't know. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I'll reference
Exactly.
back to people like, Daniel Kahneman or what's the name? I can't think of it. Uh, Ed Catmull or
Mm-hmm.
Ray Dalio. It's like, I'm really good at what I do, but I also don't know some stuff, and I can stop and say, I don't know, which is how they got to that level, because a real expert knows a lot and can do a lot, but also feels comfortable saying, I don't know. I've never, but
Mm-hmm.
let me think about that. Let's see. That's like you said, it's a very growth mindset, human connection kind of way to go.
Well, it just brought up the idea of excellence and perfection.
Mm,
Perfection is the expert who has himself or herself in a box. I'm an expert. I know everything. I've got four sides and I'm in the middle of the box. Whereas with excellence, that is about change. You can have something and you can be someone, but with excellence, there is never a cap to the amount of excellence that you can achieve,
hmm.
because everything that you learn, it's better and better and better and better. Whereas that perfectionist piece just locks you in. And a lot of experts get into that perfectionist place and gets them into trouble.
I was listening to a book which I was kind of disappointed because it talked about a lot of things and they weren't so great on their psychology. They were engineers or something. They were very smart. They had a lot of knowledge, but it was like, I thought you were going to teach me something I didn't know. By and large, they didn't, which left me a little disappointed. At the same time, when it came to the Dunning-Kruger effect, the whole idea, I thought it was just people are tend to be overconfident about what they know, but it really isn't. And this I really appreciate that it's the one super gem I got from this book, and that makes worth listening to a whole book for. And that was the Dunning-Kruger effect is as you know a little bit, you're very overconfident that you know more than you think you do because you've written or you've read one book on something. And then as you really start to become much more of an expert, then your confidence starts to dip when you go, I have a PhD in this, blah, 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 but I don't know this. So you see
Mm-hmm.
that in the true experts that they know what they know, but they're also, unlike fake experts,
Mm-hmm.
self-aware that there's still plenty they don't know. So they go very confident, unreasonably
Yep.
confident, less confident, but still knowing what they're talking about, right? So that if you get over that hump, you find a real expert who's going to say, I don't know. I've never heard about that.
That is a very powerful, powerful statement. And I often, if somebody asks me a question, I don't know the answer, my comment is, I don't know, but I will find out for you.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Next one is what things would determine the value of organizational culture and leadership training?
Hmm. Organizational training is about teaching the leaders what happens at each level of an organization. And there are very practical things that are involved, as well as the emotional things that are involved. And the emotional things are about how do you work with people? Okay. People are, uh, they're emotional beings in general. So in my mind, when the organizational training is brought in, it's about helping people understand the psychology and the sociology of the ripple effect, how one thing happens in another, and it's putting the dots. It's like a puzzle piece. That's what I love. It's puzzles, putting the puzzles together and understanding how what happens here in the right hand, how it affects the left hand. That to me is what's so powerful with organizational training. With the leadership training adds the emotional side of the house. The leadership, as I mentioned earlier, there's a difference between leadership and management. Management is the structure and the nuts and bolts, and whereas the leadership is the emotional guidance, the influence that people have with their coworkers, their employees, senior levels, and all the way across the board. So when you understand the organizational part of it, then you can bring in the emotional side of it. And the leaders then know where to go, what to do, what is affecting what, because in that organizational chart, Everybody's affecting everybody. When we
Mm-hmm.
act like silos, that can create a real problem in an organization. It's about teaching in organizational training, in my perspective, from my experience, it's about helping the silos understand how much they need one another and how
Mm-hmm.
to communicate with one another. So there is a broad understanding across the organization of what needs to be done, and you can back each other up when there are big challenges that emerge.
Ideally, how often should this training take place?
Some people have trainers in house. Okay, so it's continuous and they've got people flowing through a program. So maybe a year-long program, and they've got people going through, and then the next group go through, and then the next group go through. And then you've got your small businesses that can't afford to have a training
Mm-hmm.
department. And then they bring in the outside contractors to come in and do different training, or they send people out to do training. And I love refresher courses. I love folks going through a major training, understanding what's going on, and then on a yearly basis or a bi-yearly basis, they are getting refreshed because, and there's a difference between training and educating. Training is, and coaching, by the way, training that has coaching attached to it is powerful. Training that has, and again, it's the type of training. Are you making people sit there and they become nothing but monkeys? Okay, just rote? Or is it an experiential training where people really sense what is going on? And it's a training where people feel the examples are made with very tactical, sometimes with play, by the way. I love play in training because people learn better when they're playing. When we get into this left-brained, super controlling leadership and everything is, I find that people, when they get to my trainings, are like, wow, I learned so much today, and I've taken this other stuff a bazillion times, because you're bringing spirit in, you're bringing energy. When I say spirit, I mean it's a spirited interaction. You're
Mm-hmm.
bringing intuition in, and you're bringing fun and play in. So people want to attend those kinds of trainings, and it really depends on what the focus is, where the holes are. To just do training for the sake of training, no. But if you can identify the holes in the organization and develop the training around their holes to make the entire organization strong and whole, coherent, confident, competent, credible people, then you're in a really good place. So I don't like the idea of doing training for training and having to do, well, we have to do this training 3 times a year because we just have to. No, you
All
don't.
right. So during the major training, how frequent is that?
Again, it's customized. It depends on the
Mm-hmm.
organization and what it is that they're doing, and what their needs are. There
Right.
are some organizations who are constantly bringing in people, newbies. Okay, that may end up being a continuous training. When it comes
Mm-hmm.
to leadership, you may not need the continuous training, but you may need the coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it all depends on the organizational needs, what it is that they require, and what it is that uh, they actually need on the back end. What kind of organization is it? Is it a
Right.
manufacturing organization? Is it a retail organization? Is it a service organization? All of them are a little bit different in their needs and requirements for training and coaching.
Under those conditions where those are merged together, yin and yang,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word,
Mm-hmm.
um, is there a common frequency which you find effective for the major training?
Well, I'm going to be blunt. This organization I was just talking about, herding
Mm-hmm.
cats, trying to do the 4 trainings. There are so many people in that organization that we couldn't get a schedule down. It took us 3 months to get a schedule down to
Mm-hmm.
help these people. And the leaders are every other week, and the staff is every other week. So
Okay.
that's what we're doing for them. So again, it depends on schedules, people's
Of course.
schedules, and what it is that they need to learn. Some folks, to me, it's the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
It, for me to answer that question, it's about looking at people's schedules and existing projects. You got to pull people off of projects to be able to go to this training and or whatever training it is that they're doing. It's the
Mm-hmm.
project, it's their work schedule, it's all kinds of things. So I'm not sure I can really answer that because every single training I've done in the last 30 years has been so different. For me personally, it is irrelevant because, again, there are way too many factors. And because I customize everything, it all depends on the organization. You know what it is to have 3 months to get four sessions, 2-hour sessions together because of people's schedule. It was
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Yeah, it's a complete waste of time, energy, and money on their part and on my part. Because if you don't have the leadership who understands what it is that I'm training them, then the leaders can't coach them to do what it is I'm teaching. So unless they're
Right.
willing to allow the leaders to go through the training first, forget about it.
Which types of between session support would be most beneficial?
Well, again, because I was talking about projects and schedules and all that, I love Zoom. I love the online virtual support, especially if I'm coaching people. Um, I because it's easy, it's quick. They don't have to travel. They're in their offices. I prefer doing the in-person training, but to back it up with online coaching, again, it's about time, effort, and energy and
Mm-hmm.
guiding people to where they need to be.
Ideally, how often should it be available?
Minimum of twice a month, every other week, minimum.
Mm-hmm.
There are times with depending on who the person is, and there's like I've been hired to work with problem leaders, and I'm with them once a week,
Mm-hmm.
minimum. And they also have access to my cell phone. So when something
Mm-hmm.
comes up, I can send them a quick, they send me a question, I can send them a quick
Right.
text. So that's what I like to do is a minimum of twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
And but again, if it's a problem leader, if it's a problem child, every week.
How often would be practical and sustainable for that between session support?
I have found that that's exactly what works. Every other week
Mm-hmm.
really works. And access to my cell phone when they have a challenge, they go, "Whoops, okay, I'm not sure what to do here," and they text me.
Right.
So, and if they have a problem, again, if they're a problem child, I find that that works um, either way.
Right.
Whether
So
it's
same answer.
unicorns,
Yeah.
same answer, same answer.
How do you envision training helping leaders address specific cultural and leadership challenges within organizations?
It depends on what the challenge is.
Mm-hmm.
So, if the training is my entire team is stressed out and they're becoming inefficient because they're so stressed out, overwhelmed, and overworked, that's a specific kind of training. If it's about communications, that's a different type of training. If it's about mindset, that's a different type of training. So it all depends on what it is that they're looking for and the kind of training that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all of them, with the mindset piece, you know, to go back to what you were saying for 24/7, all of those trainings can have components where they can amplify both personal as well as business life and career.
Mm-hmm.
So where I start personally is with stress management. I don't care what training I deliver, I always start with stress management. Why? Because people are so stressed out that once we can teach them how to be in the moment, how to be mindful, how to uh, really reduce their cortisol levels, increase their DHEA levels, get to a space where they can think instead of react, then the
Mm-hmm.
other trainings work because they're in the moment versus thinking in the ahead. Most of us think in the past or the future.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting these folks to think in the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
when they're thinking in the moment, then we can get them to the future. It's that bridge. past, future, past, future, past, future. But to get them in the moment, they got to look in the mirror. And that means looking at all of their warts. So when they look at all of their warts, both from the business side, from the company side, and their personal side, and get the stress levels in control, then we can get into all the other trainings, whether it's
Right.
operational, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whatever it is that they need.
Mindfulness is a real thing, overwhelmingly verified by neuroscience, but it is very much in the vein of Buddhist philosophy, right? That if you're
Yes,
worrying about the future, which hasn't happened yet, or the
that's right.
past, which you can't change, of course you're anxious and stressed out. It's not easy, but mindfulness is a fundamental thing about making your brain work better and your life happier.
That's exactly right. And the thing is, if you're in the past, if you live in the past, and a lot of us do, when you live in that space, you're living a life of regret. And when you live in the future, you're living a life of worry. But when you're living in the present, you're living in what I call the I am. If you have a bullseye, a circle
Mm-hmm,
with a vertical line and then a horizontal line, you create the bullseye. When you're living in that bullseye, that's the present.
mm-hmm,
And that the key is to keep one leg in the present at all times. And that takes practice, lots of
mm-hmm,
practice to do that. And it allows you to go back in the past to look at things you may have learned and need to learn to bring into the present. Or when you go to the future, the future is this moment, this moment, this moment. I love to give the example of the car and driving at night. All you see are 10 feet ahead of you, but you still get to your location.
mm-hmm,
So if we realize that the present will help us step by step get there and stop worrying about it, things are going
mm-hmm.
to fall into place.
Considering the potential impact, if the training we've been talking about were a course, what pricing model would you find most appealing to your clients?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always done it as I charge per day for my
Mm-hmm,
in-person training and
mm-hmm,
invoice afterwards.
mm-hmm,
If it's a membership model for the entire organization, there's a membership fee per person, which is
mm-hmm,
what I've done in the past. Uh, and that has just really worked for me. So it depends on what the organization wants. Do they want to create a program that is evergreen? Do they want lifetime access? Am I
mm-hmm,
creating the program for them? Do I still own the rights to the program? There's a lot involved in the pricing model there. Is this my trademark work? I'm not going to be just turning it over. So there's licensing, there could
mm-hmm,
be licensing involved. There's a lot of different things that are involved depending on what the organization envisions
mm-hmm.
for their
Okay,
people and what they can afford.
right. So, I mean, actually, that's a good answer because that's really what it is. It's sort of like either what has worked or what do your customers seem to prefer, and what's working for you is what, whether they prefer it or not, is working for you, and you have evidence to back that up because you're working. Okay, so the next one then is, this is part B of the same question. So now, what pricing model would you prefer? So let's say you wanted to get some training on the neuroscience side of it, or to learn something that I know that you don't yet know. So now I'm training you on something. Now you're the client. So what pricing model would you prefer as the client or recipient of some kind of training like this?
In my industry where I live, people do two things. A, you pay a monthly fee, bam, 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 or you pay for the whole program up front.
Mm-hmm,
So it really depends on the individual, especially if I'm going to create a program for my business and I'm going to be bringing people in on a membership fee. Some folks who are leaders, yet they're smaller businesses, they may prefer to pay a monthly fee.
mm-hmm.
Others prefer to pay the whole thing because it's a fiscal year and they want to get
I mean,
so
that's it. It's a lot about the accounting. That's why I was surprised to find out how many would just say, let's do this one and done. we've already defined the target results and we expect to get them. But we're busy
Yeah.
people. Here's the money. That chunk of money is not a concern, but that's not realistic for small businesses. So you, that
Mhm.
is, which do you prefer? Which was actually the essence of that last question.
Which do I prefer?
So you're buying my course.
You're
What,
buying
how do
my
you want to
course.
pay?
If it's a company and they're paying for a lot of people, I don't mind the monthly fee. I actually sort of enjoy the monthly fee because they get invoiced once a month. It's automatic. Bada bing, bada boom. I know what's going into my checking account. You know,
Okay,
it's
we need to flip it though. It's not what they are doing. I want you to change the pronoun to I. That is,
what I
you are
want.
buying my course. You are receiving my course.
Oh, I'm buying it from
How
you.
you're buying it from me as an example.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I'm not, it wasn't registering to me. I
it's all good.
apologize. I still like the monthly fee because then I
Okay,
know exactly what to pay out every month.
right. Okay, great.
I like the
Next
monthly
one.
fee. It's easy. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I see strengths on all of them from both
Yeah.
sides of that equation. It was like, if I'm not getting the results I want and it's monthly, then I just stop paying and I stop receiving the training. Conversely, I see why the other one would be good, but yeah, it really
So
depends.
I'm going to share something with you on that, by the way.
Hmm.
Okay. There are programs where they're 12-month programs. Say it's a $15,000 program and it's 12 months and you sign a contract for that
Hmm.
program. Now I'm talking about these are individual solopreneurs. Okay. Not a
Hmm.
corporation, solopreneur. And you sign a contract. And the people in my industry, that contract is so locked tight, it does not take into account life and life changes.
Hmm.
Okay. So because that happened to me, and I was part of a contract where they wouldn't even talk to me. I was taking care of two elders in their
Hmm.
97, 98 years old, and
Wow.
stuff happened. And I couldn't get involved with the training or whatever. They wouldn't even talk to me. It was awful. What that taught me was for my business, what I do, and for out of courtesy to my students, my programs are built on trimesters.
Hmm.
So at the end of the 4 months, the contract ends. Hey, guess what? If they don't like the way I'm training and I don't like the way they're behaving in my course, goodbye, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. We go our separate ways. So I love the idea of the trimester model, but that's not with large corporations. That tends to be more for my entrepreneurs. And I did that specifically because of what I experienced. I no longer do the year-long contract model
Hmm.
because these contracts gets and it says it right in there. Something happens, you don't attend, you still have to pay.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's a very human way of operating.
Well, when you were talking about it, that's what I was thinking. It was like, it isn't like you are being lazy. It wasn't like you weren't investing your time or your attitude is bad. There was something
Yeah.
very extremely human. And also what I thought about is like, and what were they teaching? Were they teaching about, culture development and empathy, but their actual behavior shows that empathy is not even a word that they really seem to
Yeah.
understand.
No.
That's so fundamentally against developing relationships and lifetime value that it's like I believe it happens, and I could even think of some big famous gurus who probably behind that kind of heinous stuff, that it
Mhm.
was like if they were on the other side of that contract, they would be the ones who would be trying to sue you.
Yeah. And well, let me tell you, I was at a point where I got so turned off by my own industry that was
Hmm.
doing that. It was ugly. So that's why I have just changed the way I do business. And
I love
that's
it
why
though.
when you say how long this and that and the other thing, it's because of that I'm a little
Right.
nebulous in putting things into a box with how long, because life happens, events happen. Who could have
Right.
predicted 9/11? Okay. And I had everything all set out. That's fine. All
Right.
my contracts got pulled.
But I think that's where, sort of despite airtight contracts or sort of true for contract language, acts of God, where there's something that comes up. Now, it's unquestionable that there's a whole lot of students out there who their lack of progress or success is absolutely their fault. You can't not put
Yes,
in the work
that's
and
right.
achieve the results. And for that, it was like, sorry, you don't get your money back because you
Yeah,
didn't do what you needed to do and you understood that is wholly
exactly.
different than here is something truly beyond my control, in which case you could go, okay, in this case, we can accommodate you. You can start next trimester or whatever it is. So I really respect what you've done there and that you've taken. That's an example of learning from the past and making the future better, but also, like I said, just being a human.
Yeah,
That it
exactly.
doesn't shock me in a cynical sense, but it shocks me that anybody would be so oblivious or to realize that because they're in the internet age. And though I'm not a lawyer, I don't know anything about the details, we can tell the truth about our experience with companies. And that those companies, anytime a company would do something like that to me, I was like, do you really want me to share my experience with everybody I know? Because I am prepared to
Yeah.
do that if you're going to be heinous, like you shy of being tied into a contract where that's impossible, in which case it's like, why would you ever enter a contract where they said, oh, well, you can't talk about your experience, that is not the details of the training, but actually if something goes really wrong, we're going to sue you if you even tell people how crappy and unethical we truly are.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I personally did not. I mean, I did not get involved. I didn't go down that route at all.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
um nothing. I won't
Yeah.
refer them. I won't. No, nothing.
Of course not. Yeah. Yeah, and that's it, right? Even if you're silent, you know what you're not going to do.
Right.
That um protest of omission. And that's the tricky thing too with those is there's the component or the reliance. They're clearly in a sense, and yeah, I'm gonna be very judgmental here, not good people or not a good organization, and they're relying on people not to want to stay in that space of fighting the darkness, which of course, more than anything, has a tremendous personal drain on the person doing it. It's like you're taking care of you're taking care of parents or grandparents. You don't need this other heart wrenching thing to do. You have other things to do. So you let it go and they get the money and they go on their way. And they, in some cases, I think maybe even rely on the fact that people don't want the fight, right?
Hmm.
And it's just another level of evil. Okay, so the next one is, who do you know who could benefit from being interviewed by me on these topics?
Well, I can think of a few people. Um, one of my very good friends,
Hmm.
but the kind of training that Christina does is WordPress. She teaches entrepreneurs how to create WordPress websites.
Hmm.
She's a trainer, and she's a darn good one.
Who do you know who's looking for guests who can speak on these topics? That is me as their guest.
That I'm going to have to think about because I haven't been listening to
Hmm.
podcasts lately.
What questions, if any, do you have about the topics we've been talking about?
I really don't have that many questions. I don't have any questions. I loved it. It was great topics. It was a great conversation.
Sure, sure. Let me refine my question there a little bit. It's not what questions do you have about this interview? It's like in the topic of organizational change and leadership development. Do you have any questions? You're a trainer who you do this kind of thing. Do you
Right.
have questions about that topic? That is like, I know this, I've wondered about this. Does anybody know about this? So
Okay.
questions you have about your own topic.
It's not necessarily a question, but it's more of a statement that
Mm-hmm.
I wish leaders would recognize that the mental, physical, and emotional health of their people is actually going to help them make more money and help their business succeed. It's a frustration that I sometimes see that leaders don't get it. They don't really, when you're completely money focused, your most important capital in an organization are your people. That is the
Mm-hmm.
most important capital that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take care of that capital will rise to the occasion and help you make even more money and be more successful. Everybody wins. And I get frustrated that a lot of leaders don't see that.
Right. I totally agree. So I'm going to steal your words and I'm going to make it into a question just to see. So I was like, how can we get leaders to understand that their staff, their employees are their most valuable asset and that that's what something that they need to take care of? It's like, how can we convince them? Is that, could we ask a question in that form maybe?
Absolutely. Because when you take a look at how much it costs an organization to lose employees and how much it costs to hire those employees to
Mm-hmm.
replace, you're talking into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in hiring employees and interviews and lost time because those employees are gone because of stress and not
Mm-hmm.
being treated well and not being taken care of. So it costs the organization a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money. And it puts stress on other people when the employees leave.
Right. And, that's all what it's about. I've said, again, this is something I've repeated in a lot of these interviews, and that is even if all you are is greedy, taking care of the human side, that is, taking care of your employees, making them want to be there, to make them more intrinsically motivated. There's things like results only work environments and that. If you're just a money grubbing evil person, if you are Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, if you want to make more money, it's already been shown over and over again in a lot of research and a lot of books that you actually make more money
Right.
when you treat people not like the carbon-based profit units that I talked about. That,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's what it's
So
all about.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So the next one, and I just want to add one thing to that, and that is even Jeff Bezos, as much as I don't think he cares about anybody, and I know this is a strong statement, but as much as I think he doesn't care about anybody but perhaps himself and his family, even in Amazon, it's like, okay, here's $4,000. Once a year, people are offered like $4,000 or thereabouts to quit. It's like, if you're not happy here, take this money and leave. Because even he, again, being all business and all analytics, recognizes that it's better to pay it's cheaper by far to pay someone $4,000 to leave and find an employee who wants to be there than to keep an employee. It's like, what's worse than having an employee um uh who's doing poorly leave? Having an employee who's doing poorly or doesn't want to be there staying is going to cost you more than anything.
Yes, it does.
Right. So, yeah, if again, if Amazon does it and they're definitely not about treating their people well, obviously they're doing it for the money side. At least that's my opinion. Okay, next and very last question. How could I make this interview better?
Shorten the less questions.
Fewer questions or shorter questions?
Um, you could actually, this interview that we did today, you
Mm-hmm.
could probably break up into four different podcasts because
Okay.
people remember the learning component. People, after 15, 20 minutes, people stop listening. And to do this topic, which is heavy, and do it in 20-minute chunks. So you could do the long one. We did the long one, but edit it so that is it's in 20 million chunks and do it as a series
Mm-hmm.
will help your listeners.
Right, right. So to give you the backside of that is after the interview happens, obviously I remove anything that's just sort of extraneous,
Mm-hmm.
and then keep the core.
Mm-hmm.
And then I chop every single question into a single question and I transmit them. I post them on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook as single questions. And then
Ah,
the entire interview is also available. So in the
got it.
digestive side, that's absolutely what happens. And I literally do it because I want to sort of get progressive commitment. The shortest question, if you answer a question, if I ask it, if it's under a minute, that's the first one. The next one is so I go from the shortest question and answer to the longest. That's how I transmit them. So let me
Okay.
ask you one separate question. How could I make this interview better for you? That is, that's better for their experience. What would be better for
Yeah.
your experience or for guests?
I'm sorry. Um, Meg, I loved. I think it's great. I mean, I'm on the only thing that could have made it better was doing it in the morning, which is your nighttime. So for me, being on the East Coast and you being in Japan, the time thing, it's a time thing that I'm not so sure we could have massaged it any better than we did.
It's about whether I think this is going to give value. And absolutely, I think there was lots of great value to be had for me, my learning, and for my audience as well. So thank you very much. ありがとうございました。